In the third cave at Qumran, a copper scroll was found. It is a list of treasure sites. It lists a place name and describes where a certain kind of treasure is hidden, and it says what the treasure is.
Josephus makes it clear in his discussion of the uprising against Rome from 66 to 70 and on to Masada in 73 that the Romans tortured the temple treasurer and found out the hiding places of the temple treasure. I think you won't find much. The Romans were very persuasive and extremely covetous.
It may not seem as exciting as Indiana Jones finding the Ark of the Covenant, but the discovery of hundreds of ancient manuscripts in the caves near the Dead Sea is certainly more significant, because it really happened. Before the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, the most ancient Old Testament manuscripts dated from the 10th century A.D. The Dead Sea Scrolls are 1,000 years older than that. Do the almost magical truths hidden in the ancient Hebrew parchments have the power to change the direction of nations and peoples today? I'm Dwight Nelson. Let's take a look at the evidence.
There are lots of stories about how and when the scrolls were first discovered. Most of them center about a young shepherd, Bedouin shepherd boy who was looking for lost sheep. These are well-known stories, but I think they're a little romanticized. The young shepherd boy turns out to be someone in his 30s. He was a known treasure hunter. He was always looking out for things, and one day, while he may have been also shepherding animals, he was looking in caves near the Dead Sea and happened to throw a rock in this given cave that we now call Cave 1, and instead of hearing just the clatter of a rock, he heard kaplunk, kaplunk, and the sound of broken pottery.
Venturing into the cave, the shepherd soon discovered the pottery held hundreds of ancient manuscripts. Anxious to capitalize on his find, he quickly sold the scrolls. Once in the hands of scholars, it was soon realized that these tattered documents may shatter the foundation of the world's most dominant religion.
The public at large only thought that the scrolls were found in 47 in Cave 1, because those scrolls were immediately publicized, went into, after the founding the State of Israel, a special museum was built to house them called the Shrine of the Book. And the public thought that was what the scrolls were. But no, over the next decade, 10 other caves were found. An international team was established by the Jordanian government to oversee those scrolls, since it, as a non-Christian Jewish monarchy, didn't feel particularly interested in these scrolls. So what happened was these scholars, owing to a different mix of motives, held back the publication of these scrolls. People who were in the inner sanctum said to peers, "Let's go slow till the crazies go away." Now, the issue of the crazies going away has to do with the issue of how the scrolls affect Judaism and Christianity. There was a famous left-wing writer who, his name was Edmund Wilson. He wrote for the New Yorker magazine a series of articles on the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1954. And he began to suggest that the scrolls had something could throw light on the origins of Christianity. And the people who had gained control of the scrolls through the Jordanian government setting up this international committee were largely church people, clerics. So when they heard what Edmund Wilson was suggesting in the New Yorker magazine, a whole blanket of secrecy went over the scrolls.
Well, one text raised the question about whether the scrolls had information that was damaging or would put a very different light on, say, Christian origins than has traditionally been thought. A small fragment that did not appear in public until perhaps around 1990 even though it had been known about long before this, spoke about a Messiah who possibly was killed by someone else. So it was claimed, this fragment said, and that because it contained information about a Messiah who was killed, a Messiah before the time of Jesus, it was claimed that this kind of parallel was somehow damaging to Christianity in the sense of detracting from its uniqueness.
According to mainline scholars, there's nothing here that would affect the faith of the faithful, and that the scrolls do not contradict or upset any of the religious materials that we presently have. According to opposition scholars, just the opposite is true, that there are materials in the scrolls that seriously call into question the kind of messianism portrayed in the documents that we are familiar with and know as the Gospels. If Jesus were alive today, and there were things done or said in his name that were not his, he would expect you to find this out. So I think that any person of faith, before they move into faith, and I've had people who say, well, faith is anything I believe it is. I don't agree with that. Faith should be based on something solid, on a rock if you like, and I think that the modern person wants to look into this and be challenged and find out what in fact recommends itself to his faith and what he may find as different from his faith.
This is Hello Channel. Come learn English as you watch TV. It will change your life.
Part of what's intriguing about the Dead Sea Scrolls is the kind of words that come up. Words like pseudepigrapha. I love how that rolls off the tongue. Pseudepigrapha. Or how about apocrypha, or even apocalyptic? Each of these words is used to describe various scrolls that relate to the Bible but are not necessarily included in it. While they may not have made it into the Bible, they were obviously considered important enough to be laboriously copied and carefully hidden from invading armies. Who were these people who took such great care to copy and protect the scrolls? The scrolls were found in Qumran, located on the northwest shore of the Dead Sea, 15 miles east of Jerusalem. Nothing more than sand and mud bricks now, Qumran may have been a permanent settlement for a radical Jewish sect.
The residents of Qumran, according to most scholars, were a small group of the party that we call the Essenes, one of the three major Jewish groups back in the time of the scrolls. We have one ancient text written by a Roman author, Pliny the Elder as he's known, who mentions that there was a group of Essenes living on the northwest shore of the Dead Sea. They believed that they had a special role in history, that the ancient prophecies in the Bible pointed to them and were being fulfilled in connection with them. And they also believed they were living very near the end of time. They anticipated the arrival of two messiahs. One was from the line of David, and one was to be a priest. And they were to be the leaders of the forces of good at the end of time.
Now, the Dead Sea Scrolls present a situation where they are in camps, wilderness camps, following a regime of extreme purity, waiting for the heavenly host that will join them under the leadership of the Messiah in this final apocalyptic war against all evil on the earth. Now, to my mind, that is information that rarely gets out to the public at large, and they have no understanding of what the scrolls really believe, and they don't understand how much it is like what they believe.
As more and more of the scrolls have been translated, the concept of divine inspiration, that everything written in the Bible is the exact Word of God and not the thoughts of man, has been challenged and cast in a new light.
You have in the Dead Sea Scrolls the confirmation that the Bible, as we have it and know it, is fairly accurate.
Right from the very first cave discovered, there were two Isaiah scrolls found there. And one of the Isaiah scrolls is almost word for word and even letter for letter like our traditional text of Isaiah. So I think it is reasonable to conclude and to make the statement that our biblical text that we have right now is just amazingly accurately copied from scrolls 2,000 years ago. We have, in one sense, copied text very, very accurately, and that is amazing because you have to copy, hand copy, all the way from the period of the exile or thereabouts up to the invention of the printing press. All those manuscripts had to be hand copied, and they are amazingly faithfully done. However, that's only the copy of one form of the text as it existed back then.
The scrolls are only relating to the Old Testament and the books of the Bible that we know. Now the scrolls have more than just the books of the Bible that we know. There's about 300 or 400 other books that relate to the literature of the scroll community itself that we call the extra biblical material or the sectarian material, because these are books never seen before, or in some cases books we've known about from other sources like Enoch or the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs or Jubilees or things like that that the scrolls are very strong on, things that were called apocryphal literature. Now the scrolls don't make any distinction between these books. They're all equally holy as far as the scrolls, or unholy as far as the scrolls go. All the scrolls are thrown into the caves helter-skelter. They don't have a Bible, as it were.
Until 1947, we saw the biblical text as unique, single, uniform, as they call it, a stabilized Hebrew text. But now we can show we've got documentary evidence of differing literary editions of over half of our Hebrew Bible books.
We have many copies of books of the Old Testament or Hebrew Bible among the scrolls. Sometimes we have multiple copies of individual books, and they don't always agree precisely in their wording. We have different copies of the book of Jeremiah, and we have evidence that the people of the scrolls knew of a much shorter version of the book of Jeremiah than is printed in Bibles today. All of this has been studied a great deal by the scholars of the Bible, of the text of the Bible, and it's evident that there were different editions of many of the books in the Bible that were circulating among Jewish people in the last couple of centuries BC, in the 1st century AD. These different copies show us that the texts of these books continued to develop. They had been written long before this, and of course had been copied for many years, but they continued to develop and took on somewhat different forms.
This complicates efforts at trying to understand and explain how theories of inspiration and revelation really work out in practice, because where do we see the act of revelation? Where do we see the act of inspiration? Is it confined to the original, if we can get the original, or does the inspiration continue in the lines of translators and copyists and things like that? It's very difficult to understand, but I think the more we look at the biblical scrolls in general, the more we would have to see that inspiration is spread out much more broadly than we had earlier anticipated.
Because the Dead Sea Scrolls are so old, just about all of the material they contain has to do with the older part of the Bible, the Old Testament. But do they shed some light on our understanding of the New Testament and add to our knowledge of Jesus?
So far as we know, no Christian text or New Testament text has been found among the scrolls, despite claims that have been made that there are a few fragments of them.
There were some claims made that there were perhaps a version of the Gospel of Mark because some Greek fragments were found. This was claimed in the 50s by a Spanish researcher. Most people don't think that those Greek fragments do represent Mark. And in my personal view, Mark has such a different ethos than the Dead Sea Scrolls.
The scrolls, while they were written by Jewish people, they are Jewish texts, have nevertheless had quite an influence on the study of the New Testament, simply because they tell us so much about Judaism at the time that the first Christians and Jesus lived.
Many people base their faith on the Bible, Jesus Christ. Well, the scrolls tell them what was going on in Palestine at the time their faith was being set forth.
One of the things that's really fascinating about the scrolls, how they illumine our knowledge more than we had before, is that they show us documentary evidence now of a prior period in the history of the biblical text where we could only speculate.
The scrolls are a time capsule to the past. The scrolls are something that have been placed in caves and untouched for almost 2,000 years and give us almost a living witness without editorializing or the retrospective imposition of historical consensus on data right from the time of Jesus.
We know much more about the world in which Jesus and his disciples lived in Judea and in Galilee. I think some references in the New Testament become clearer as a result of this.
The Dead Sea Scrolls provide written records of a period of history for which other documents are very scarce. Because of that, they give us a key to understanding society at the time early Christianity developed. Dr. Peter Flint has seen, has touched, and has read the original manuscripts. When we come back, he'll talk with us about the meaning of the Dead Sea Scrolls for today.
Learning a new language can be difficult and discouraging, but it doesn't have to be. Hello, I'm Karen, introducing Hello Channel, the revolutionary new channel designed especially to teach English. If you can speak English, the future is open for you, since speaking English means greater opportunity and higher paying jobs. By watching Hello Channel, you are immersed in this valuable language. You'll hear the words being spoken. You'll see the speakers' mouths when they say the words. You'll read what's being spoken in large, clear subtitles. And you'll speak out loud, practicing what you have just learned. There is no better or faster way to learn a language than total immersion. Hello Channel does exactly that. There's programming on every level so you can watch the shows that are just perfect for you. Whether you've spoken a little English, a great deal of English, or none at all, the Hello Channel has something for everyone. Join us for a convenient, affordable, and fun way to shape your future. There's so much in store for you if you'll just say hello.
Get ready for a fascinating interview with the man who wrote the first book on the Dead Sea Scrolls in the new millennium, Dr. Peter Flint. Welcome to The Evidence.
Thank you, Dwight.
Title of that book, The Meaning of the Dead Sea Scrolls. You've been living with the scrolls for years. In fact, I have here the book you collaborated on, one of the three editors, the Dead Sea Scrolls Bible, where you translated the biblical portions of those ancient scrolls. Share a New Testament example that would link the scrolls with New Testament material.
I need to turn to some specific writings here.
Okay.
In Luke chapter 7.
And that's New Testament.
This is in the New Testament.
Okay.
Luke
All
chapter
right.
7, Jesus is asked a key question. Are you really the Messiah, the one who is to come? And this is his answer. Go and tell your leader what you've seen and heard. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, the poor have good news brought to them. Now, scholars have thought, now this is very strange. He doesn't say, hey, I'm the Messiah. He says, go and tell what you've seen. And there's one saying in here that's very strange. Jesus even says the dead are being raised. And a lot of people have thought, you know, no way, this couldn't be genuine. This must come from the later church. They must have put these words in the mouth of Jesus. In the light of the scrolls, we can demonstrate that this statement is actually a messianic claim by Jesus. He's saying, I'm the Messiah. Let me
Those
prove
words,
it to you.
you're saying those words are actually a quotation from that appears in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Well, it's not quite a quotation, but those words appear in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'll give you, it's one of the scrolls called 4Q 521. Now,
that's the name of the scroll.
That's shorthand. You see, scholars like to do that. 4Q means K4 at Qumran.
I see.
521 is number 521.
Okay.
A shorthand way of referring to a scroll from K4.
Okay.
And I'll just give you a couple of lines. It talks about the coming of the Messiah. And look at these words. It goes on, he will release the captives, he will make the blind to see, he will raise up the oppressed. And then it goes on, and as for the wonders that are not the work of the Lord, when the Messiah comes, God will heal the sick, raise the dead, and to the poor announce glad tidings. Now, what does all this mean? Simply this, is that when Jesus is asked, are you the Messiah? He is saying, look guys, there's a recipe. Go and tell what you've heard. A, B, C, D, E. 4Q 521 gives us independent verification, pre-Christian, 100 BC, that many Jews were expecting a recipe when the Messiah comes. A, B, C, D, E. We see it there, and it's repeated in the New Testament 100 years later or more, showing that Jesus must have talked like that because other Jews thought that way. So this shows us that our faith is historic, it's ancient, that many of the things we believe are reliable and are not just modern inventions. The way I like to put it is the scrolls help the thinking man or woman look at the faith and come to conclusions. Even without the Bible or the church, you can look at the scrolls and find that the faith is reasonable and makes sense and is life-giving.
Dr. Peter Flint, thank you for being on The Evidence and sharing your research with us.
Thank you, Dwight.
It is truly a fascinating realm of study, this whole matter of the Dead Sea Scrolls. If you'd like more information on these scrolls, want to get deeper yourself in your own personal study, log on to our website. We'll put the address on the screen right now, theevidence.tv. The material will be waiting for you when you log on. I'll be back in just a moment. The Dead Sea Scrolls have it all. Drama, intrigue, politics, religion, secrecy, history, prophecy. It's all there, not only in the ancient texts themselves, but in the incredible stories surrounding them and their impact on the scholarly world. But for now, the question is, what do they mean for the rest of us? What they mean to me is that God doesn't ask us to suspend our intellect or reason to believe in Him. He doesn't ask us to trust in the Bible blindly. On the contrary, in an age where the Bible has faced such scrutiny regarding its origin, its credibility, and its reliability, the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the way that they affirm the integrity of the Old Testament texts go a long way in supporting the accuracy of the Hebrew Bible. The Dead Sea Scrolls, in many ways, answer probing questions regarding the credibility of the Bible. Do the Dead Sea Scrolls prove that the Bible is the Word of God? I can't say that they do. Do the Dead Sea Scrolls even prove the existence of God? Again, I can't say they do. Do the Dead Sea Scrolls prove that the Bible is an accurate portrayal of the ancient history it tells about? I can't say that they do. But what I can say, and I can say it most emphatically, is that they prove that the Bible we have today is very much like the Bible that was read thousands of years ago. The concepts expressed by the writers have been preserved for all these years. And that, to me, is something of a miracle itself. For The Evidence, I'm Dwight Nelson.